So let's go to level 3, shall we? Yeah, let's. All right, so here we are at level 3, and level 3, let's have a look. What's going on? So make that bigger. There we go. All right, so now that you know some of the basic cells, let's look at who's where and what they do. Just a little more detail. So like I was saying, neutrophils are somewhere between half and nearly all of your white blood cells, depending what's going on in your body, and everybody's going to have their own particular level. So this is going to make you more resistant to some things, less resistant to others, and depending on what you get yourself into, what you happen to run into in the world, this could be good or bad. But they have an entire lifespan is only about 2 days for a neutrophil, and they only spend somewhere between 4 and 10 hours, so like one good work day, in circulation, unless they get activated. These are the ones that normally they lead a short, quiet life, but when they get activated, these are the ones that are absolute beasts. Yeah, just they go in and murder whatever it is that's causing trouble for you. Yeah. You got your eosinophils, and that's great. They're still pretty common, and so these are the ones that you can kill off with steroids. And yeah, they're great at destroying a bunch of things that people don't really get anymore, but probably used to way back, hundreds of thousands of years ago, even hundreds of years ago. And now, since they're sitting around with nothing to do, they keep thinking they see something and saying, oh, boss, something's trying to get you. I'm going to attack it. And usually that turns out to be pollen, and so they're heavily involved in allergy. Then you got your basophils. These are pretty common, and they're going to be in circulation. So those white blood cells. Things like mast cells are going to go live inside the tissues, so those aren't going to be characterized as like a flowing blood cell. And then you got your monocytes, 3 to 7%, which are going to turn into macrophages if they get activated, or they may end up turning into dendritic cells if they don't ever get activated, and they'll go and sit in the tissue somewhere and wait. Little watchmen watching for trouble. Yeah. And then all of your B and T cells are going to be somewhere between 20 to 35% of your white blood cells. And if you were to have something like AIDS, you would have very low counts of lymphocytes. And so you would tend to start getting other diseases because these guys can protect you against some stuff, some sort of basic level stuff, but they can't ever remember, and they can't get any better at attacking a pathogen. And so you can just keep getting bacteria in that wound, and it'll be like a brand new experience for your neutrophils and eosinophils every single time. They'll say, wow, bacteria. Okay, I've never seen these before. And then the next time happens, same exact thing. So you need these lymphocytes. You need these T and B cells because they have the memory, and they're the only ones that can specifically go after just the right cells. Everything else just has to kind of nuke an area in your body, just destroy everything in an area to try and get rid of the problem. All right, so in addition to your veins and arteries, A and P students, which I know a lot of you either will be or will soon be, you also have these things called lymphatics. And so it's another little circulatory system that runs around. And every once in a while, there's going to be a little lymph node, which is like a little pocket along the lymphatics. And these are little clubs where immune cells can go and hang out. So if a dendritic cell picks up some sort of sign of danger out on the periphery, it's going to go to the nearest lymph node and search around and see if it can find a T cell or a B cell that's willing to interact with whatever it has found. And if it doesn't find one in the first place, it'll go to the second one, and then the third one, and the fourth one. It'll just keep going until it finds a B cell or a T cell that it can talk to, basically. Yeah, so these are going to be connected up all over the place, including down in your gut. You're actually going to have these little Peyer's patches down there. And so things that you eat, you can go one of two ways there. A lot of things that you eat, you'll build up immune tolerance to, which means that your immune system will ignore it. But some other things that you eat, if they come in with the right signals, you can actually, recognize those, and you can vaccinate the whole body by eating certain things. That's how some of the polio vaccines work. And they'll also protect your guts because there are a lot of viruses that can get down there in your gut. Okay, so here's a section through a lymphatic. There you got your artery in red, your vein in blue, your little capillary bed in sort of purple in the middle. And running along that, you've got sort of cells and liquid, but not really blood, that leaks out of that and gets into the lymph ducts. And they are going to all drain in together. And yeah, you just have a couple of these ducts meeting up at a little lymph node. And even within a lymph node, there'll be little areas, just like there are areas within a club. And there'll be areas where you're going to have B cells hanging out, or areas where there'll be all young T cells, you know, raring to go out and help you in some way. Just like that. And so there you go. As you are circulating your blood, you're pushing fluid around. Really, that's what the heart is doing. It just happens that that fluid has red blood cells in it, and so they're exchanging oxygen to keep you alive. But at the same time, the fluid is leaking out of those and leaking into, it's kind of connected up to the lymphatics. And so, yeah, the lymphatics are also going to be hydraulic. They're going to be little pipes, and they're going to be driven along in concert with and kind of by your regular circulatory process. Okay, so inflammatory response. We talked about this in the last video. What is it? So an inflammatory response is in response to some sort of injury, but also in response to diseases, viruses, bacteria, stuff like that. So what are the signs? There's 5 signs. And if you ever become a nurse or a doctor, you're going to have to memorize these things. But for now, you can get away with it. So you're going to have swelling, which the formal name is tumor. Yeah. And you're going to have redness and heat, which are rubor and calor. And you're going to have pain, which is dolor. And you're going to have loss of function. And I think there is a Latin translation of that. But yeah, when it was taught to me, it was just loss of function. Meaning that when your finger is all swollen up because you got an ingrown nail or something like that, then yeah, it just hurts and you don't really want to use it and grip a baseball or whatever else until that goes away. So we've all experienced probably all of these things. And yeah, you know exactly what it is. And now you can put a word to that. That is an inflammatory response. And that's going to be mainly caused by the innate immune system, things like macrophages and neutrophils in particular. Okay, so you have your initiating event, which is going to be something happening. So you get infected or you get trauma, like, you know, you step on a nail or something like that. Hit your hand with a hammer. Yeah, whatever you do. Yeah, that is going to cause production of mediators. And mediators are going to be all of these chemicals and small proteins that are released by granulocytes. And these are going to call in all of the rest of the immune system. So there's lots of different mediators, and they're going to have different functions depending on where they're acting and what type they are. So you'll have a lot of mediators that are involved in changing the shape and size of veins and arteries. Because if you want to slow down the bloodstream so that these white blood cells have a better chance to stick to the side of the wall and burrow in and go out and, you know, attack danger, then you're going to want to dilate those vesicles. Dilate means open up a little bit wider. And so you're going to lower the blood pressure, slow down traffic in a particular area. If you need the white blood cells or red blood cells to move faster through an area, you can constrict. And so there are proteins and whole systems that will dilate and constrict. One of those is going to be a thing called the Angiotensin Renin system. And that's the one that's involved in the new coronavirus. The new coronavirus binds to an angiotensin activating enzyme. It's called ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme number 2. And so that's why it's a little worse in people that already have high blood pressure, because when the virus attacks this thing, then you can't lower your blood pressure. You don't have a way to do that. And so these are all some of the other things that you can do there. Chemical mediators of these events are going to be things like histamine. And so if you take an antihistamine, histamine is going to be released by mast cells and eosinophils for the most part. But there are a couple other cells that can release a little bit of histamine. And histamine is going to cause a whole body inflammatory response, a little bit of that. That's going to be that sort of allergy feeling, that sort of I'm sick feeling. And so, yeah, we take antihistamines so that our nose will go back to normal or our lungs will go back to normal, or we don't just feel terrible when it's pollen season. And so on. There are so many other things. There are specific messages that only one or two different cell types will respond to. And so there's a lot of complexity in the immune system, which is why immunology, the study of the immune system, is, I think, one of the more difficult things to actually master. I mean, again, there are levels with this. You can work your way up from a kind of a basic understanding, which is what I would say I have, to very sophisticated understandings, which I admire but do not have. Okay, so what happens? Well, if you got these neutrophils or macrophages would do the same thing. If you've got damage down here in a tissue, so that tissue will be will have something like a dendritic cell in it or a mast cell, and it'll be producing, let's say, histamine, or let's say interferon is one of the things that a lot of cells can produce when they're in danger. That's going to leak up to the surface, and it's going to start entering into the veins and arteries right here. And when it does, things like neutrophils and macrophages are going to pause. They're going to come out of circulation, stick to the wall. It sort of makes them put the brakes on, and then they'll actually squeeze between the cells of your veins and arteries, and then go out and squeeze between the cells until they find the site of damage, at which point they will attack it and do a really good job fighting it. So just to sum all this up, you got three big lines of defense. You got your first line, which is the dumb line. This is like skin, yeah. And low pH, like inside your stomach. The pH is around pH 2 when it's producing acid. And so that destroys most anything. Genetic barriers just means that some people are going to be genetically a little bit different in a way that protects them from one disease or another. We probably all have some of these resistances. We don't understand all of these resistances yet. But yeah, chances are you've got superpowers against one or more kinds of disease, probably a fair few of which are already extinct. We've like dealt with them with public health. But yeah, your genes don't know that, and they're ready to protect you. They're here for you. Yeah. You got your second line of defense, which are those goofball innate immune cells. And these are things that are going to release histamine for an inflammatory response, or release interferons for an interferon response, which is going to call in the smart side of the immune system. So this is the acquired immunity over here, and that's going to be your B and T cells and all their many flavors. And they are going to change their DNA so that they can make a better match, a better fit for the protein. That's the idea. Okay. That's the end of that one. Thank you very much.